Hello. Now, today I will actually be returning once more to the Chapayev because the last commentary I made on it, well, I mostly focused on the range part of the ship, mainly kiting away, spamming HE, staying out of cover, burning them to death with multiple fires and such. And in a way, I felt like it might also have sent a bit of a wrong message. Well, first of all, this is against T7 to T9 matchmaking, so pretty common when you're T8 yourself. The enemy carrier in the Taiho says he wants the Taiho, or he wants me for the mission, because I'm the only Russian cruiser in this game. And that's also one of the reasons, if you guys haven't figured it out by now, you probably noticed that I've been featuring a lot of Russian cruisers and Russian ships in general as of late, the Tashkent and Chapayev and all these. I've been featuring all of these, and that's mostly because, well, I got the quest done myself, the one where you need to kill 20 Russian ships. I got the quest done myself like a week ago, but I've seen a lot of threads and comments and pics about people really struggling to get this one done, and that made me realize just how few people really play these Russian ships. So I figured maybe I could spark some more interest into this line and maybe get a few more people grinding this, because, well, a lot of people are struggling to get the necessary kills that they want. Hence why all these Russian ships as of late. And hopefully, well, it will help people get this done, because I think all the Russian ships are very, very strong, and there's no reason for them to be so under-featured, so scarce, to be fair. There's not much reason to it, since I consider them quite strong. Anyway, moving on, of course. One of the first things I wanted to say was, I felt like the last time I made a Chapayev commentary, I kind of gave a bit of a wrong idea in one way that, well, I was very low HP, of course, so I had to kite away and I had to use the stealth. But one of the big problems with this stealth firing long-range HE ships is that people tend to not realize that there's a moment in every game, pretty much in every game, where you have to stop, you have to change your playstyle, and you have to make a play. There's this moment where you have to stop playing that defensive role and you have to make a play for your team and you have to help your team out. Now, a lot of people fail to realize this. I mean, the most common thing for people doing this is, of course, battleships. They tend to sit back, they snipe, they easily break 100k damage, but they don't really tank any damage, they don't provide any presence on the capture points, they don't zone out any opponents because they sit back far in their base and they're just sniping. All they're really doing is damage, but they are neglecting all the other influence they could have on the game itself. And so, of course, battleships are the most common. Sniping battleships are the most common role. Yes, they might do some damage, but it's not consistent and it's not that terrifying, and ultimately they'll probably lose the game. I mean, yes, they might have over 100k damage, but they're still going to be losing the game. But the battleships aren't really the only culprits who are guilty of this. Cruisers tend to do this, especially cruisers capable of stealth firing. In fact, it's very common to see Zaus, full HP Zaus. At the end of the game, you see a full HP Zaus sailing away on the enemy team, really, really far back. He's full HP, he's fleeing, he's spamming HE, but his team is losing around him. He goes, "Oh, my team is so shit," and he himself probably has way over 100k damage because he's been burning battleships left, right, and center. But ultimately, he never really changed his playstyle at any point of the game. He didn't realize that, well, hey, wait a minute, maybe there was something more I could have done besides just constantly doing this kiting away, stealth firing HE thing. And you see it in Zaos, you tend to see it, well, you see it in Ibukis as well, because, well, you can start stealth firing there, and of course you see it in Chapayevs as well. Yes, the Chapayev is significantly squishier than those two and not as much of a brawler, but there's the same principle that applies, that at some point you need to change your game style up and you need to counter the enemy. When you see your team is about to lose, or you see the enemy is about to grasp some significant advantage, and you know that you can't just stop it by spamming HE and like chipping away at them with that fire and HE damage. I mean, yes, the damage adds up, it's consistent, it adds up, and eventually you will do a lot of damage, but it's not that effective at really stopping someone in their tracks. And that's the situation where you need to realize, like, oh crap, this is the moment I need to do something to help my team. And in this game I will be showing an example, hopefully, of that moment where it goes, oh crap, we might lose this game, now it's time to act, now it's time to do something to change this around. Now, sadly my team, well, we only had one DD and he died very, very early, which makes life, of course, quite hard. So we were kind of forced to go to A's, which the enemy team has abandoned. Now, I've often say on this map, I hate going to A. The reason why I hate going to A on this map is because it's very hard to push anywhere else. If you go to C, getting B from C is quite easy. You have open channels, you got plenty of cover. Getting into B is quite easy. If you go A, getting into B is a real nightmare. There's this one choke, and any DD worth his salt will just spam torps into that narrow choke if someone tries to push through, and he will have some easy kills. And so the only other way to get around to B is, well, flank around the south or flank around the north, and that ultimately involves splitting up your force, which can be good, but most of the time it's really not that good, because you're kind of trickling into the enemy's superior firepower at that point. So I strongly dislike going to A on this map. But when we have no DDs, well, beggars can't be choosers. It looks like the carrier is going for me. This is the carrier. The Taiho, of course, said he wanted me as a kill. I popped defensive AA. Still deciding which squad to click. I'm turning in. Oh well, he's already dropping. I should have clicked the one on the far right, because he's gonna get a side drop, and side drops, even though the torps are spread, the ship of course turns like a brick, and if I had clicked that squad I might have actually denied him that one torp hit, which would have made life a lot easier. So that was a bit sloppy play from me. I was a bit too confident in my defensive AA dealing with that threat, but ultimately still him wasting all those torpedo bombers and only getting one hit was a net win for me, because well, one hit isn't exactly the end of the world. Of course, I'm continuing the basic Chapayev gameplay. On maps like these, well, you're not a Kutuzov, so you have no access to smoke, so instead you use terrain to your advantage, which is built the basic Chapayev gameplay. Either you use range for stealth firing or you use terrain for stealth firing, but ultimately the Chapayev is of course a ship that doesn't deal very well with being shot at from multiple sources or multiple directions, because it's squishy, it has a large citadel, it's fairly clunky, so you won't be dodging any sort of broadside volleys easily at all. So most of the time you want to spend, you want to be stealth firing and playing it fairly safe. Now the score, we're a bit behind on the score, and we're down on one ship, so this game is obviously fairly close. Of course, here's the kind of the thing I was talking about that kind of happens when you go A. We did manage to get B, but that's mostly because my division mate is Alul Fedig, who has, of course, unlike most battleships, has balls, so he charged in and pretty much took that cap for us, which of course has which is something you can't expect the random people to do that often. He of course paid for it quite heavily. He's extremely low on HP and he's not exactly in an optimal position right now. He kind of has to bunker down on B and, well, hope we can hold out long enough to win this game. I'm of course continuing my harassment, basic Chapayev gameplay, continual harassment on any battleships I see. I would go for cruisers as well, but at this range it's better to just go for the battleships, since ultimately you have a bigger impact and you have a more consistent hit rate against big targets than you have against cruisers. Now our carrier is probably struggling to do too much against them. I mean, yes, he's an Essex, but unless they spread out, they have a Donskoy, they have a Neptune. For those that aren't aware, those two are probably the two of the strongest anti-air cruisers in the game, followed by the Baltimore. So Neptune and Donskoy are pretty damn nasty when it comes to dealing with planes. Now, of course, this game is starting to slip away from us. Quite terribly, in fact. Down south you see, of course, you see an Ibuki, long-range HE spamming, as I mentioned earlier. That is quite common, that Ibukis tend to play very defensively. Now, they still don't have C though, so we're still gaining points. At this point there's no reason to play aggressive. You have to recognize when you need to play aggressive and when you don't. At this moment we have 2 caps, they have none. So every second we stay alive gains us more points, gains us an advantage. Now here I I underestimate the carrier. I see him coming in with the planes, I pop defensive AA, but I do it too soon. He quickly realizes I have used my defensive AA, so he pulls back out of range, which is of course a smart thing to do. It's something I call baiting out the defensive AA, and something I do quite often when I play carrier myself. So that was an intelligent play by the enemy carrier. He saw me pop defensive AA, he instantly bailed. So the first thing I do is speed up, and I go to the closest cruiser I can find, which is the Baltimore. I write to him, Baltimore, planes incoming, be ready with defensive AA. And this Baltimore is actually paying attention to chat, and he's aware of what's going on, so he goes yes, which is very comforting to me. So I position myself so that the rock islands or the rocks are on my right, which means it's impossible to drop me from my right because there's terrain, meaning he has to go around my left, which will lead him right into the Baltimore. This is of course the Thai that said earlier he wanted me for that mission, so I know he will be coming for me. So I keep the islands here, and I funnel these planes into the Baltimore. Baltimore pops defensive AA, and these planes gets absolutely shredded because of this. Well, not only are they being crossfired by 2 cruisers, he has defensive AA active. So this was of course fantastic for me, and well, I doubt the Baltimore minds either. He gets a nice chunk of XP for shooting down all these planes. But now, meanwhile, while I've been dealing with this plane issue with the T9 carrier basically wanting my skin, now we see there's a play developing. A Donskoy, a Neptune, and a York are all pushing into B. Allo is too low to deal with them alone. A carrier can't deal with that amount of AA, and we're down a ship. So this basically, if they kept B, then it's no longer our advantage to play defensive, but this is the turning point of this game, when the game might go from our advantage to our loss very, very quickly. And this is the kind of moment you need to recognize. This is the moment where I have to do a play. I have 22k HP. It's time to make a play. It's time to change this game around. We cannot sit and just spam HE from long range anymore, because if we do, this game is over. So I charge in. Yes, it's 3 ships. It's kind of 1 versus 3, but I am angled. They are all showing broadside. They weren't expecting this sort of aggression. Allo helps me out with the first Donskoy, but he doesn't have arcs on the rest. So it's up to me to charge in. I deal with the York first, because the Neptune, Royal Navy cruiser, I can angle against him, meaning the York, who can use HE, is a bigger threat right now. I keep going left, which puts the island between me and the Neptune, so I only have to deal with 1 cruiser shooting me at the moment. So I quickly take out, well, almost 21 HP, dodging the torps coming my way, and I take him out. Neptune still has 18k HP, I'm down to 4.7 at this point. Make that 4k. But I know Royal Navy cruisers cannot switch to HE, I'm fairly damage saturated at this point, so I am gonna just angle and charge into him. He has panic grounded because he hard turned to get away from the situation, and I'm just angling against him. I'm down to 3.7, but I have his broadside. A nice double citadel, 10k, he drops to 8k. He instantly pops his heal, so he's healing back up to what, 12k, 13k, but it's not enough. Another, what, 4 citadels, and he is deleted. And that was basically the play. That was the moment that had to be recognized. You had to see it, where our advantage was about to become a huge disadvantage. The carrier couldn't deal with it. My battleship was too low. Well, he got killed now. And that was the moment where you had to change your playstyle up from defensive to aggressive. You had to make a play, so to say. It's called a play in most sports and such, and the esports, whatever. And that's kind of the moment you have to recognize. There are plenty of those in most games where you can honestly, if you pay attention to the minimap, you can recognize them as the moment when you are about to start losing the game. And those are the moments when you need to stop pushing around in your HE spamming cruisers, and that's the moment where you just need to go in. Of course, this applies very heavily to battleships as well. If they're sitting fairly defensive and spamming and wrecking people is okay, but if the enemy starts pushing in and making an advantage out of it, that's the time to make that play. But most of all, this is aimed at cruisers, because this is of course a cruiser commentary. Because, well, it's not like cruisers are innocent in this at all. Of course, I have to taunt the Taiho a bit since he's died now. He spent so many strikes trying to get me killed and he never actually succeeded, which is quite amusing to me because, well, he's a tier 9 carrier and I am only a Chapayev. Now this might look a bit glitchy. What I'm doing here is I'm zooming in and then I'm tapping the M key, which is the map key, and it gives me an aerial sight of where this North Carolina is sailing. I of course want to see if I can harass him a bit, while of course still keeping terrain between me and him so that he can't spot me. Because it would be sad to die now after basically charging into B against 3 ships. It would be sad to die to some random shell from the NC at this point. This is a pretty good spot, slowing down here. And now, once again, we have an advantage. There's no need to YOLO in anymore. The game is pretty much won, so I'm back to the usual Chapayev gameplay, using terrain to my advantage, playing it safe and harassing them. And the game ends right after. And, well, you can look at this was of course during the weekend bonus, 200% win, so I get a nice chunk of 17k XP and a nice chunk of credits. Ultimately 143k damage, which might not be that special, but considering the game itself, quite satisfying. And a huge chunk of XP, of course. Well, so many base defenses and, well, some plane shutdowns, but ultimately it adds up. And you can see there Taiho really didn't get too much done. He was rank 1 as well, but he didn't really have much of an impact this game, which is additionally satisfying, of course. And you can look at the damage. It's kind of spread out at this point, but of course, ultimately, yeah, well, in this case, high explosive 42k, armor piercing 56k, plus of course the fire damage, which is an obvious part of the damage you deal in this ship. So this was my Chapayev commentary, or, well, showing the moment and something I wanted to emphasize since my other Chapayev commentary focused so much on running away. I wanted to show you something else you also need to be able to do with these defensive cruisers, and if you really want to like elevate your gameplay and have a bigger impact on your own win rate, these are the moments and these are the things you need to recognize. Anyway, I will talk to you guys later.